Okay, thank you very much to Martin Turner, the founder and former lead vocalist of Wishbone Ash. He's on tour at the moment as Martin Turner's Wishbone Ash, and tonight we join Martin from the Boom Boom Club in Sutton. How are you, Martin?
Good, yeah, nice to meet you, Henry, yeah.
Thank you very much for coming. Of course, this venue, I know you've performed here a few times. Is it a favourite venue of yours?
I would say it's becoming one, yeah. I mean, it's always been a bit funkier than it is now. It's had some money spent on it, and they've done it up, and it's sounding really quite posh in there, yeah.
Now, onto the tour. Obviously, you're currently performing the debut album from 1970. Is that a bit of a throwback for you?
It's a challenge, I would call it, yeah. Really? I mean, bearing in mind that we wrote those songs when we were about 19 years old, when we first moved to London. And probably, you know, at my ripe old age now, trying to sing something that you wrote, you know, when your testicles were in a different position entirely, is a bit of a challenge. So we're having to kind of use some crafty trickery to get there. But it's sounding good and yeah, very enjoyable to do.
So how's the tour been so far? Are you enjoying it?
It's been good, yeah. Yeah, really good.
Fantastic. Now,
yeah.
Of course, you've been on tour so many times. Do you still get the same feeling when you go on tour? Or is it slightly different now?
It's always the same feeling, you know, you're driving away, finally everything loaded and you're in your van off to the gig. I think, have I got my phone? And no, I'm joking. I mean, you know, I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't get a buzz from it.
Yeah. No, of course. And it's not just the UK you perform. I've seen that you've got some upcoming dates in Germany.
Yeah, we go all over the place, wherever we're wanted, you know. We're off to Greece, I think,
fantastic.
Beginning of next year, and then they're trying to put together some stuff in Brazil, I believe.
Oh, wow. Have you been to Brazil before? Or?
Yeah, quite a few times, yeah. And the Far East, Japan, and yeah.
Because staying with Germany, I know you recorded your Christmas, you do a little Christmas video, don't you? And that was in 2017, I believe that was in Germany you did it from. I mean, how are you feeling about going back to Germany? Is that a particularly favourite place of yours? I see you're in Hamburg and you're in a lot of different places.
It's always interesting, yeah.
Is it different?
You know, well, it's Germany, you know. It's like they think in a different way, do you know what I mean? Their language is different and they just think more kind of in a more linear fashion somehow, but it's very enjoyable. The culture is good. It's very civilized, and you know, there's nothing better than ein Currywurst mit Pommes frites und ein großer Bier, bitte.
Now, you mentioned, of course, Brazil is a potential future touring destination. Well, what other countries, apart from the UK, have you particularly enjoyed touring in the past? Are there any particular favourites of yours?
Oh my God. Italy I was very fond of, mainly because of the language. It's got to be the most beautiful language on the planet.
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
Absolutely gorgeous. Spain, France, we started in France actually, Wishbone Ash in 1970. That was, I fell in love with France at that point. Obviously we toured extensively in the USA during the 70s and you know, which is great, except, you know, you got to deal with American people, you know, who've all got a gun, you know, and you haven't. So, Japan, I literally did fall in love with.
Really?
I cried when we had to leave there, yeah.
When were you in Japan?
Mid-70s, I think it was, the first time we went out there, about 75, 76. And we went out several times, you know, a bunch of times since. Absolutely lovely. Australia, New Zealand, there's so many great destinations really, and South America, going there was a trip, you know.
Going back to the UK now, obviously, except from the Boom Boom Club, what are your favourite venues to perform in the UK? Where do you, when you're announcing a tour, where do you look and think, oh, I'm looking forward to going there?
Oh my goodness.
I know you don't want to be biased.
Yeah, that's a really tough question. We played a fabulous venue the other day, which is Colchester Arts Centre in Essex. And it's in an old church, deconsecrated church. And usually churches are a nightmare for sound because they're very hard surfaces, lots of brick and marble and big and echoey, and the sound just is zinging all over the place. And this one wasn't like that at all. I don't know what they've done in there, but the sound was absolutely magnificent. And praise be to the Lord. You know.
Again, on touring, do you have kind of a gig in mind that you would say, yeah, that's the best gig I've ever done? Or?
Well, I used to be very, very fond indeed of the old Marquee Club in Wardour Street, which we played on a number of occasions. I mean, I'd been going there as a lad back in the 60s, when I was a semi-professional musician, and I saw Mick Taylor's first gig with John Mayall, and various other kind of very memorable gigs there. And then to finally play there was great. I mean, the dressing room was minute, and we did play there on one occasion, and it was absolutely ram-packed. And, girls were fainting and having to be carried out across the stage. It was a pretty crazy gig, but there was something about that particular room that just sounded great. Everything sounded great in that room. It had a magic to it, and then, they shut it down and went off down the road to a different venue, and it just sounded horrendous in there. And it lasted for about a year, and it went belly up, because it just didn't sound good.
Have you got any perhaps funny stories of unconventional gigs where stuff's gone wrong, or there's been some funny moments on tour?
There was one up by the Canadian border, which was kind of like, what was the worst gig you ever played?
Right.
We had a lot of problems with the sound equipment. I think the guy had rented a venue that isn't normally used for gigs, and we had to leave. We were really spent hours trying to get the sound equipment working properly, which meant we couldn't open the doors until about 8 o'clock. And the audience had been stood out on the street for like an hour or more.
Oh my goodness.
And it was about -12. So everybody sort of burst into the building, immediately went to the bar and got absolutely blitzed over the next half an hour. And we had Taj Mahal on with us. He was opening the evening, and he started the place gradually became quite raucous and noisy, and he started playing with a tiny little kalimba, is it called? Like a little small instrument that you hold in your hands and pluck these kind of levers on it. And I was stood at the side of the stage watching him, and I thought, has he actually started his performance, or is he just messing around? And then the audience were unaware that he had begun his performance. Right. And nobody was taking a blind bit of notice of him. And he went on for about 5 minutes, and, just everyone was ignoring him. And then all of a sudden, he lost it. He got over to the microphone and uttered profanity after profanity, white, MF, honky, this, that, and the other.
Oh my goodness.
He really insulted the audience, threw the microphone down on the floor, and marched off stage. Meanwhile, the place went from being very raucous and noisy to absolutely silent, like a doctor's waiting room. You could hear a pin drop. And then as he walked off, some guy yelled, "Yeah, man, rock and roll!" And the whole place erupted again. So we had to go on and entertain the troops. Taj had negotiated with the promoter that he would go on after us, provided the promoter paid him. Okay. So the promoter paid him his money, and then the minute he left the dressing room, Taj got in his car and did a runner. So it was down to us. So we went on stage. We got about 20 seconds into the first tune, and the power went.
Oh, no.
So we had to come off stage, and the road crew sorted it out, trip fuses or whatever it was. We said, okay, have you sorted it out? They said, we do not want this happening again. It sort of really puts your nerves jangly,
Yeah.
And it's absolutely fine now. We've straightened it out. So we went back on stage. This time we got about half a minute into the first song. Bam.
You're joking.
Yeah, the power's gone again. So we took about half an hour out. I'm like, listen, I don't care if you have to run a cable from the nearest nuclear generation facility. We cannot perform without electricity. Make sure it's laid on. So they went out and they ran it from another building.
Right.
And it took ages. And then eventually we went on and we started up again. And this time we got a minute in, and we told them up front, if the power goes again, we're going to call the gig off. We're going to tell the people they get their money back, and we're going to pull out of here. So the power went after a minute this time, and that was it. We're like, right.
You call it off?
Yeah, our manager had to go on stage and inform the audience that everyone was going to get their money back, and I'm sorry, this has been a huge screw up, and, what can we do but apologise? There were bottles and cans and all kinds of stuff being thrown at the stage. we had to have an armed police guard on the dressing room door.
Oh my God.
Stuff was smashed. I mean, I wouldn't call it a riot, but it was not far off. It was pretty bad, yeah. But, because it was so different, it stuck in your memory like crazy. And I think it was the next day, around that time, we rolled up at the border, and the guy who was driving us had been smoking marijuana to kind of finish it off, to get rid of it before we hit the border. So we get to the border, we're all there with our passports in the car, and it's this immigration guy, we open the window to talk to him, and he turns around and says, "Elmer, get some dogs out here, this damn car stinks of marijuana." I'm like, officer, excuse me, but I think you might be smelling my cigarettes that I'm smoking. I'm smoking French black tobacco, Gitan. He said, "Yeah, sure, buddy." He knew what marijuana smelled like.
He was not having that.
Yeah, so they took the car apart.
Have you been back to Canada since that experience?
Yeah, once or twice. I remember we flew from Edmonton, Ontario, where it was -15. We landed in San Francisco, changed planes, and then flew on to Honolulu en route to Japan, but we were playing in Hawaii. And that afternoon, we got down on the beach. It was like 86 degrees on the beach, Fahrenheit. This is old money. So that was 100 degrees change in one day. I mean, it made you feel sick.
Yeah.
It was so bizarre. Yeah.
Going back to April of this year, you of course released Beauty of Chaos, which was performed at the Citadel. Mm-hmm. How are you pleased with how that went down?
It's good, I believe. I mean, I've never watched it.
Have you not?
No.
Do you tend to watch back or listen back to your own stuff, or?
Not really, no.
No.
I mean, it's a moment in time.
Yeah.
You do it, you write it, you record it, you rehearse it, perform it. I mean, what are you going to do? Go home and start watching it on TV, watching yourself on the box?
Yeah, fair enough.
That's for the people who follow the band and want to listen to the music, watch it on video, DVD, whatever. It's for them, yeah.
Now, we mentioned you're, of course, going to Germany. You're coming back after that, and you've got a spring 2019 tour planned, which actually involves coming back to southwest London. So if you did miss Martin tonight, he's playing at the Eel Pie Club in Twickenham. That's another venue you've played
really
a few
nice
times.
venue.
Yeah, how is that as a venue?
Gina, who runs it with her husband, because it's quite close to where I live. I live in Woking.
Okay.
And so I'd pop down there to see bands all the time. I mean, Arthur Brown was on in there one night. Absolutely incredible. Wow. I mean, it should have been on Wembley Empire Pool, not the Dog and Duck in Twickenham, It's not called that, but it's a pub above a pub. But she was asking me for quite a long time if we would do a gig there, and I was a bit reluctant, to be honest. It's a tricky get in. Didn't know that it would work financially, but I mean, they're such lovely people. We agreed to do it. We've done it twice now, and it's been absolutely brilliant. So, they're a very good crowd of people that go there. They really are genuine, kind of fanatical music lovers.
Yeah.
I thought maybe it was a bit purist, a bit more kind of R&B come blues. But, we've done really well every time we played there.
Yeah, as I say, that's in April 2019 if you want to go and see Martin do that. It's a different album, isn't it? New England is is the subject of that tour. Again, I know you said it was tricky going back to, obviously, the old album. How are you feeling about...
Well, this is my agent and my manager have discovered that if we do this, my band, Danny and Misha on guitars and Tim on drums, we all sing, and we have the ability to be able to reproduce entire albums, whereas the original Wishbone Ash back in the 70s never did that, really. Maybe Argus a little bit at first, but it was always problematic. There'd be songs there that you just couldn't do. Admittedly, sometimes because of technology, like, for instance, if you've got an orchestra dubbed on a couple of tunes, ballads, which we did back in the 70s, I mean, there's no way you could reproduce that on stage, but you can now with the aid of technology. So it's become quite a popular theme, and the people seem to like it. So we've been doing various albums so far, and I'm sure we'll continue to do more.
Now, of course, I mentioned that we're based in Kingston. We do a lot of southwest London, and we mentioned before we started the interview that you've had some interesting experiences in Fulham, of course, with Right Said Fred, who are friends of yours. There is a connection with my dad's shop, and of course you know them very well. My dad used to live with them. Where does your connection with them start? And you said you've done some recording with them in the past a few times.
Yeah, I used to live in East Sheen. There was me, engineer who did Wishbone 4, was Keith Harwood, and Mark Bolan. We all lived in a little triangle either side of the Upper Richmond Road in Sheen. I was one of the only guys in the late 70s, early 80s in London. There was me and the guitar player from Roxy Music. We were the only two people I knew of that had professional recording equipment in our homes. Phil Manzanera, yeah. So people used to go record it and then come down to mine and carry on, etc. I met Fred and Richard, who came to record, through a drummer who was working with me, Ray Weston, and we got on really well. And we did a lot of recording with a couple of different lineups, actually, and the band were good, you know, but they just never seemed to be able to get away, get a record deal, you know, find the right thing. So eventually, we used to hang out socially as well. There are places on the Upper Richmond Road also, so be driving home late at night from London, you know, and I could see they were still up, so I'd bum up and knock on the door, and you know, there'd still be a party going on. It was great, but eventually they knocked it on the head and actually started working. They set up a gym at the Dance Attic, was it called, in Putney, and you know, she'd asked them, you know, do you want to run the gym for us, because we've got no one to do it. So yeah, we'll do it. So Fred and Richard were doing that, and then they decided, well, you know, we can't run a gym and be puny little runts, so they got all pumped up themselves, you know, they did a lot of exercise and steroids and all the rest of it, and before you know it, they'd completely changed.
Oh my goodness.
And it was around that time that a young guy, I think it was the girl singer we'd been working with them, her little brother had just finished doing a diploma, you know, music college, and he wanted to do some recording, so they recorded that song with him, that I'm Too Sexy for My Shirt, which is something that, you know, Richard would have come out with at one of the parties. You know, someone made a rude comment about his shirt or something. Oh, I'm too sexy for that shirt, you know. And everyone would have cracked up. Yeah, that'd be a great line for a song. And I mean, it was just such a great record. I mean, it really was. It was brilliant.
Brilliant. Well, Martin Turner, thank you very much for speaking to us.
Cheers, Henry. Nice one.